Martin Holloway was no stranger to the dark. An urban explorer by passion, he had spent countless nights scavenging through the wreckage of abandoned buildings, from defunct factories to crumbling asylums. Each foray brought with it a thrill, a chill down his spine that hinted at the ghosts of lives once lived. But this time, an unexpected invitation had taken him to an uncharted territory, the decaying remnants of a forgotten mansion on the outskirts of town known only as Blackridge House. The letter had arrived mysteriously in the mail, edged with mold and cryptic markings. "You are invited to uncover the truth," it read, coupled with a date and time. Martin, unable to resist the call of the unknown, marked the date on his calendar, tinged with an unsettling sense of dread. Martin arrived at Blackridge House as the sun set, the last rays bathing the mansion in an eerie orange light. A group of 5, mostly strangers, had gathered. They were eclectic: a local historian, a psychic medium, an avid photographer, a woman in a long blue coat, and a man with wild hair and darting eyes who had yet to utter a word. The historian introduced himself, explaining that they were there to uncover the mansion's secrets. Built in the late 1800s, Blackridge House was rumored to harbor a tragedy. The family who resided there disappeared without a trace, and faint whispers of hauntings lingered in the air like smoke. As they stepped inside, the atmosphere shifted. The air thickened, infused with a heavy, musty scent. Wallpaper peeled off the walls like the memories of those who once lived there. In the center room, an ornate mirror stood, its reflection fractured and unsettling. Martin felt an inexplicable pull toward it, an invisible string tugging at his gut. They split into pairs, exploring the labyrinthine structure. Martin found himself with the woman in blue, who introduced herself as Eleanor. She was quiet yet observant, and an unsettling calmness surrounded her. As they ventured further into the house, the light began to dim unnaturally. Shadows twisted and danced around them, evoking a sense of being watched. "Can you hear it?" Eleanor asked, abruptly halting their exploration. Martin strained to listen, finding soft whispers drifting through the air. "What do you hear?" he asked, the hairs on his arms beginning to rise. "Secrets," Eleanor responded cryptically, her gaze fixated ahead. They stumbled upon a dusty library filled with faded books, leathery tomes that seemed to breathe in the prevailing darkness. Among the titles, one caught Martin's eye, The Collective Whispers of the Forgotten. As he reached for it, the whispers intensified, a cacophony of anguished voices screaming in silence. Suddenly, screams erupted from another room. Racing towards the noise, they found the others clustered around the wild-haired man, who was kneeling, clutching his head. "They're inside me!" he shouted, sweat beading on his brow. "The voices, they won't stop!" Eleanor stepped forward, touching the man's shoulder in a soothing gesture. "You must let them go, release them." Martin felt a surge of protective instinct for the man, but the words hung in the air like a noose tightening. Disturbed, he turned to see one of the portraits on the wall, a family in tattered clothes, their eyes hollow and wide. They seemed alive, watching him, begging for release. As the others attempted to help the man, Martin caught glimpses of fleeting shadows in the periphery. The house felt alive, pulsing with a dark energy. Eleanor's grip tightened on his arm as if sensing his growing panic. "We need to finish what they started," she whispered urgently, leading him back to the library. Inside, the book seemed to emanate heat, the pages fluttering as if caught in an otherworldly breeze. Martin opened it, and as he read the words, the whispers transformed into distinct voices. They told tales of despair, betrayal, and unimaginable horror, detailing how the family had mingled with darker forces, binding their souls to the house itself. "Martin, we have to face them," Eleanor urged. With a surge of adrenaline, Martin rallied the group. They ventured deeper into the mansion, feeling the oppressive weight of the darkness coiling around them. They came upon the basement door, heavily locked and marked with occult symbols. It demanded entry like a gaping maw. "There's something down there," Martin declared, believing that the answers lay within. With some effort, they forced the door open. The basement was a chasm of shadows, a graveyard of twisted specters that pulsated with malice. Martin felt the weight of despair press against his chest. He turned to see the portrait family emerging from the darkness, their eyes glowing with a malevolence that made his blood freeze. "Release us!" they cried in unison, their voices merging into a deafening roar. The shadows coiled around them, and the group felt their resolve wavering. In the frenzy, the wild-haired man reeled in terror, succumbing to the voices within. He charged toward the spirit family, yelling, "You want freedom? Take me!" He lunged forward, allowing the shadows to engulf him. A soul's sacrifice, it seemed, would bind them in eternal darkness. The air grew thick with anger and loss, and Eleanor clutched Martin's arm. "It's too late for them, but we can escape," she screamed, pulling him back. Martin hesitated, torn, but eventually wrested his gaze away from the phantoms. They sprinted up the stairs, heartbeats echoing against the cold stone walls. As they burst into the light of the fading day, he glanced back to see the shadows retreating, sucking in the wild-haired man's scream. Haunted by the escape, Martin withdrew from exploring. Nights were filled with screams echoing in his mind, the faces of the family permanently etched in his thoughts. Eleanor remained a haunting presence, a reminder of what they shared within Blackridge House. Days turned into weeks, but the whispers never ceased. One night, Martin discovered a new letter slipped under his door, the same moldy paper taunting him. "You are called again," it read, the penmanship shaking with urgency. As he stared into the mirror that still graced his living room, he saw faint reflections of the spectral family behind him, their hollow eyes silently pleading for release. And in that moment, Martin Holloway understood, the darkness had not just watched him, it had chosen him. He was bound to return to Blackridge. The trap of the whispering dread had been laid, and the invitation couldn't be ignored. Now, he could no longer turn away. Everything he feared called him back, an unholy siren song deep within the marrow of his bones. The end, or perhaps just the beginning?